Hello, 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 good people. It's your sister, Reverend Jocelyn, here, and welcome to another episode of Impact Woman. I'm your host, Reverend Jocelyn, and I love the opportunity to meet with you week after week because it gives me the opportunity to interview some dynamic women of God who are called to create transformative ministries. And so today I am here to introduce to the show this amazing woman of God, Dr. Linda Bing, who she has extensive experience in diversity, equity, inclusion work. She is a woman who has been in live radio for many years. She also is a master storyteller in her own right. And because of her testimony, she has gone from experiencing tremendous pain in previous relationships to now growing and healing from that and now coaching other women through her kingdom business. And so she is here today to share her testimony with us. And I'm so grateful to have her here. Welcome to the show, Dr. Linda Bing.
Thank you so much, Reverend Jocelyn. I appreciate you having me on.
Yes, well, I had to because when I heard your story and was learning about all the great work that you are doing in the community, I was like, okay, I want to interview you. And obviously, I did have you on my show for the healing work that we do.
Yes.
But I want you to spend some time talking about your personal story as it relates to the behind the scenes before you actually started your ministry. So tell me a little bit about your story.
Sure. Well, let me give you a little context first, or your listeners, because I know you know some of this already. But I am the youngest of four. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I did grow up in a home with my both parents in the household. My mother was saved, dad, not so much. And so I would say, though, that we grew up in a Christian environment because mom made sure that we understood who God was. And in fact, I was 12 when I gave my life to Christ. And I did spend time working in the church, like helping out in the Sunday school room with the younger children and those kinds of things. So a life of service has always been who I am. Even before I really knew to call it ministry or anything else, I was always of service. I worked in volunteer groups, like things that would help me to grow in my leadership and my servant leadership. So being a Girl Scout and, different things like that. So I feel when I look back, I can see where that path was always in front of me. I would say that what threw me into it more heavily, of course, the stronger my walk became, the closer I walked with Christ, the more I got into service. But one of the things that really helped was being in service in the church and seeing the impact that service makes, that ministry makes. So there are times when I, led Christian education, or perhaps I was a biblical teacher, a biblical lay counselor. I've worked on pastoral committees. I've worked with things like guest services and being a greeter with hospitality as people enter the church. And so helping people get in the right spirit, helping people understand service was something that was important to me because it helped me to grow and it helped me to see that I had sort of a pull or a calling in that area. And, I know from the work that you do, you understand by being ordained that it is a calling. But I think to some extent, any ministry that you do, whether you're ordained or not, you need to know that that's the direction where God wants to use your gifts and your talents and your abilities at that particular point in time. So that was sort of the backdrop. The pain that you talked about, oh my gosh. When I tell my story, I focus on my marital years. Now, granted, there's always pain in life. If you look back, you will find things that are traumatic, but the ones that come up for you first are the ones that had the greatest impact on you. So I would say that divorce was something that was always impactful in my life. My parents, while they were both in the home, they were not the poster couple for a happy, healthy Christian marriage. And so a lot of things that I learned about myself and about marriage were false beliefs. I saw the way my mom and dad interacted. And while I never actually saw my father lay hands on my mother, I think it's because I was the youngest and I was shielded. I do know that my father drank. My father physically abused my mom. My father was a cheater. So those kinds of things, just knowing that shapes the way that you develop your own self-worth as a woman and what you expect from men and what you believe will come true in your relationships, even if you want the exact opposite. So that was the backdrop. But I thought, okay, I'm being raised right. I'm doing the right things. I grew into being a biblical lay counselor. I was the co-host on a #1 rated talk show in Atlanta called Love and Relationships. I became a certified relationship specialist. My degrees, and I do have multiple, are all in psychology. So I really believed that my marriage was going to last forever, but it did not, because one reason is you can only control your own behavior. So I could not control my spouse. He is someone who he cheated. And so over time, when I look back, I can see patterns where my life mimicked my mother's life. I was not physically beat in my marriage, but I can see some of the other things. And there are other ways of abusing someone than by putting hands on them. So I was in that marriage, it ended. I went to some counseling, did some work on myself, got married again. And the second one ended in divorce as well. So now I'm really devastated. I cannot understand this. Am I not enough? Am I not smart enough, pretty enough, sexy enough? What is going on that these patterns are developing? And again, I did some work because I wanted to know, I'm the common denominator. Is it me? And I think that's a natural question to ask. But when I got into counseling, what I learned was it wasn't what I was doing or not doing. It was who I was being. And I was being the woman that those limiting beliefs told me I should be. So I was being someone who didn't have a lot of confidence or self-esteem. I was being someone who was attracted to men. It's like that self-fulfilling prophecy. I didn't think I was enough. So I got connected to men who treated me like I was not enough. And that reinforced that belief. I must not be, or they'd be treating me better, and so you get into that cycle. And until you recognize one day, this has got to stop. And I think as I kept getting deeper and deeper in the word and understanding this is not the life that my father had in mind for me, I need to understand, what is it that I'm to learn from where I am? I needed to look at those things as detours, not my destiny, and determine, okay, with the help of God and the Holy Spirit, where do I go from here? So I'll just stop there. There's more to the story, but I'll stop there and see if you have any questions for me at this time.
I mean, you were hitting on so many gems. I'm like, oh my goodness. I mean, but that's real. The process of the devastation of going through two
Yes.
divorces. I've gone through one and it was very painful. And
Yes.
so recovering from that, having these questions, and then beginning this process of self-reflection to start healing was, I'm sure, a journey. And I see Autumn, so glad that you're here watching. Detours, not my destiny. That's right.
Amen. That's
Love
right.
that. Yes. And so we're doing this live. So if you're in the chat right now, we want to hear from you. If you have questions for Dr. Linda as well, please ask those questions. We love to hear from you. But Dr. Linda, my next question for you is for you to begin this healing process and reflection. Talk about the transformation between you working on your own healing and then deciding that you wanted to start a ministry, a kingdom business in response to that. Talk about the in between.
Okay. So I didn't realize that it was part of the healing process for me until hindsight. But as I got deeper into ministry in my church, and I'm a member of New Life Church in Decatur, Georgia, where Pastor Marlon D. Harris is the senior pastor. In order to do anything serving God, there's extensive training that Pastor Harris requires you to go through before he puts you in front of his flock. So when I was going into the biblical lay counseling ministry, as I was going through training, we went through a self-confrontation manual. And I mean, the manual is thick. I don't even know if it's still in print, but we spent months in training going through that. And when you go through self-confrontation, you learn some things about yourself, because that's deeper than just self-reflection. It's deeper than just looking back. It's developing enough of a relationship with Christ to be able to ask the questions why. What, not why, like, we're questioning his judgment, but what was the purpose? What is the lesson that I'm to get out of this experience? And how am I to now take this, make myself better, and use it in the ministry work that I do. So we had to confront ourselves on a number of different issues. And when you're in self-confrontation and you're in the word and you're in prayer and you're serving other people so that the focus is off of you and your trials and on to helping someone else through theirs, it's a totally different perspective. And in that process, there was healing. That there's no way around it. So I was getting better and better at being more like Christ just by going through that process. And I wasn't in it for me. I was in it so that I could serve others. But again, it's all intertwined. So that was the first interceding, I guess, process that went on, because there were others, but that was the first one. And again, you've got to be whole before you can get in front of someone else and try to help them develop their wholeness. So yeah, that was a very eye-opening experience.
I appreciate that, and I that manual sounds great. I wish if you could find it, let me know, because I
I
want
will.
to
I'll
look at
find
this
it.
confrontation. But I usually give people another thought around being healed or whole before doing the work, because I realize sometimes we can be the healed and the healing, and in certain areas, I feel like it could take us quite some time, to get to this place of completely being healed from something if it
Right.
was really a big issue, right?
Right.
But I do completely agree with you that you do need to do some work now, like in
Yes,
this
some work.
process, before you do start working with people. Because if you don't do the work, it is a good chance that you will emotionally bleed on people who are seeking support from you. And so,
Absolutely. And in fact, let me put a little disclaimer in there, because when you repeated back to me what I said, I heard something. Yes, to be completely healed is that's not going to happen after a one and done process. You have to keep going with that, which is why we are called into fellowship one with another, because it's in that process of fellowship. It's in the whole idea of community that we are held accountable and we're constantly reminded of who we're supposed to be and how we're supposed to act. So healing is a lifelong journey, but you've got to stay diligent so that you don't slide back. It's almost like going into remission. Thank God I've not had any illness where I had to go into remission. But my understanding of it is you are still in that space where whatever the issue was, it can come back. And so you've got to do the maintenance work to keep you from backsliding. And that's sort of the way I look at the healing process as well. Whatever triggered it in the first place, you still have the predisposition for that. But if you don't stay diligent, you could easily slip back into that. So yeah, when we talk about being healed, yes, God can heal you from anything. But one of the reasons I believe that we're not totally healed is because then we would feel as if we don't need him and we don't need one another. And that's not part of his plan. So to keep us in that community of fellowship, we're always on the brink of, I've got to stay diligent so that I don't backslide.
Thank you, Dr. Linda, for that. And I see Darlene Thorne is in the house. Darlene, thank you
Hey,
for watching us
Darlene.
live, part of our mastermind community.
Yes.
So yes. So Dr. Linda, you had this training. You're like, okay, you're causing me to go deep. And you're like, okay, I want to do this with others. I want to help others. But how did you get started? There's a lot to starting what I describe as a kingdom business. Like, did you know exactly your niche right away? Did you know how you were going to get your pricing model and how to market? What were some of the things that you went through to figure out how to get your kingdom business off the ground?
A lot of it just kind of evolved, and some of it was trial and error, which is not what I recommend, but that's what happened for me. And so I didn't know, but when I look back over my life, everything that I have done has really been about serving people, and it's been with a certain niche. It took me a while to figure it out. But just as you said when you were introducing me, yes, I started out, and I still do a lot of work in diversity, equity, and inclusion. That came from my wanting to help people that I felt were marginalized, not getting a fair deal, underrepresented. And I have always been that person. So the ministry work that I do with women primarily stems from that as well, because I do feel like women, particularly Black women, which is my sweet spot, Black women, we don't often get a fair shake. And because things are so misaligned in the world today. Many times that Black woman is the head of the household. That was never God's plan for her role in life. So she is carrying a lot more than she was designed to carry. And to be able to maneuver through being the head of the household, maneuvering through racism, sexism, perhaps ableism, and all the other isms that are out there, we are carrying much more than we were ever designed to carry. So I do have a sweet spot for helping Black women not only get rid of those limiting beliefs that are getting in our way, but to also understand who we are in Christ so that we can walk out the true purpose for our lives.
Okay. So I heard you say that some of the work that you were doing was trial and error as it relates to starting your business. I feel like any entrepreneur, if they don't say that they haven't experienced trial and error, they a lie. They a liar. Like, okay, so we just gonna put that out there.
Absolutely. And so many of us, when we're heart driven, we step out and do the work before we even think about, how am I going to charge? Am I going to charge? What's the structure going to be? Because you're driven by, I want to help you. And then you realize, I'm doing this help and I'm not making any money. Let me take a step back and start to charge. Sometimes people feel like when they're doing ministry work that they should not put a price on it. But yeah, you have to put a price on what you do, because again, if that's your livelihood, of course you can serve in the church as an ad hoc thing. You can serve in community engagement as an ad hoc. But when you're looking to pay the bills, because let's not forget, scripture tell us, give to Caesar what is Caesar. So Uncle Sam's going to be looking for his. And in order to do that, you've got to charge people for what you do. I look for Christians, particularly when it's in self-help things. If I want a coach or a therapist, or, I look for spiritually based people and doing that. There's nothing wrong with using your gifts as part of your profession and putting a price tag on it. So I did start to figure out what my time was worth. And part of the way I did that was thinking about how much had I spent on my education, looking at what other people were charging, looking at what I thought was a fair deal for what people are getting. One of the things that people have to understand is the value of it. So just think about it. When COVID hit and a lot of the work that some of us were doing went from being in person to being virtual, folks thought that because it's going to be virtual that you're going to reduce the price. No, you're still getting the benefit of my knowledge, my experience, my expertise. And that costs what it costs, regardless of how I deliver it to you. So you have to understand the value that you bring to a situation, and you charge people on the basis of the value that they receive.
Come on, put a period, exclamation point behind that. That is a key gem there, Dr. Linda, because that's something I think that many of us, we struggle with due to a couple of factors. We struggle with it because we come up in a culture, especially church culture, where we're used to doing everything for free from the heart, which is, I understand that. That's coming from a good place. We also have it where we are women, and women are grossly underpaid in many sectors of business. Definitely in faith-based organizations, we are underpaid. Yes. And so we have these dynamics here: gender, faith, like mindset, all around this. And so we feel like bad, like as if it's wrong to charge a certain amount, not realizing that, like you have many degrees, you got doctorate degrees, master's degrees, got all these certifications, put years in the game, and still you don't feel like you're worth it. But sister, you're worth it. And thinking about, if you were offering the same exact service as someone who was doing it from a secular worldview, but the quality is excellent. Just because you are coming from a faith-based lens doesn't devalue what you offer. It's definitely just as valuable, if not more, as it relates to more, yeah, right?
Because it's a methodology is the way I look at it. It's a methodology. You can go to, let's say that you go to a counselor, which is what I thought I wanted to be at first. Before I got into coaching, I was going down the path to become a counselor. I did make the shift though. And so when you are, let's say you're going to a counselor, to a therapist, they're going to use some theoretical basis, some methodology. Some counselors studied Jung, some studied Freud, some study whatever their methodology is. They're going going to use that methodology. When you go to someone who is not just a counselor who happens to be a Christian, but someone who is a Christian counselor, they're using that spiritual methodology. So it's just another methodology to get you from where you are to where you want to be.
That's it right there. That's it. And I understand for some of us, it's going to take some time for us to break those limiting beliefs that you were talking about, Dr. Linda, to
Yes.
realize that we are worth it, and not feeling bad about charging what we're worth. And so if you're a woman who is watching right now, and this is something that you're struggling to grow in, I encourage you to take advantage of some of the resources that we offer. On the screen, you'll see a link to our website, sisterstartyourministry.com. And that's where you can get a free ministry launch kit. And also, you can check out resources with my book, planner, and some other things to help you to really start your ministry and or your kingdom business. Now, I say it like that because I realize that some of us, when we hear ministry, we think of it like ministry within the walls of the church. But when I think of ministry, Dr. Linda, I think what you're doing is ministry. I know what I'm doing when I'm speaking and writing books and doing other things to coach women. That's my ministry. It's just outside the walls of the church. And so if you desire to be a life coach, you want to start your own business, a nonprofit, and you need help, go to this website, sisterstartyourministry.com, download the free ministry launch starter kit, get my book. It's designed to help you to do both. Okay.
That's
So
amazing.
thank you, Dr. Linda. And so for you, a couple more questions. When you transitioned to starting to coach women and you started to see the results that you were getting, what was it like for you to, first of all, experience it? Was it what you had imagined to be working in this field? How fulfilling was it? Like, what was it like for you to start your ministry?
It's more than I imagined it would be because, again, I almost fell into it in a backward sort of way. The way it started for me was I did not just set out to do this, but you mentioned that I was on radio, and I was. And so when I was doing the radio show, there are women who would call in with questions. Of course, men called too, but there were women who would call in with questions. And when I was listening to some of the questions they asked or some of the things they were struggling with, in my mind, I knew what they needed was a closer walk with Christ. They needed to be introduced to him. They needed to know who they were and whose they were. And on this secular radio station, there was only so much that I could do, but I was hearing the void. I was hearing that they had this need and I wanted to address it. So I actually got thrown into doing counseling and coaching because people would want to follow up with me. They would hear me answer their questions when they called in, and they wanted to know, can I come and see you? So I literally had to set up an office. I had to get with I had the education to be a counselor, but I had not fulfilled the licensure requirements because I changed my mind about it. So I had to get with a licensed therapist that I knew. I got an office next to hers in the building. She was supervising me so that I was able to deal with these women and the things that they wanted to know. And a lot of the questions had to do with a lot of them related, I guess I would say, to age. Like, for instance, one of the reasons that I focus on women who are 40 and above is because in my walk, I was telling the beginning of my story, and certainly if time permits, I'll continue, or people can connect with me later to hear more. But as I realized it, when I was about 40, 38, 40, somewhere in that range, I got divorced. And so now, even though I'm going through my own stuff, bills need to be paid. The children are not going to raise themselves. The business still had to go. I was doing freelance work. I had to become more structured and really establish a business. So it was sort of like life that kind of threw me into it because people were asking me for help. And I was not set up and structured to do it, but I did learn some things through the therapist who was supervising me. And I then did a lot of self-study and self-help things. I went to lots of business courses. When I was working on my PhD, it was through a school of professional psychology, which fortunately they prepare us to go into the business world, or to at least have a business, whether you're a clinician or not, so that you're not just in doing research or being a professor. So I knew a little bit about pricing and structure and those kinds of things. I had to pull that all together. But then you also asked, how does it make you feel when someone gets it, either when you see that light bulb go off or when they write or call or come back and tell you what you did for them, it's amazing. I remember being at an expo and a woman came up to me, and I did not remember her at all, but she came up to me and she told me that I had uh, worked with her and that I had literally saved her life. It's a humbling thing to know that God has used you in such a powerful way. Or when someone goes deeper in their walk with Christ, again, to know that he thought enough of me, and we're kind of like Moses. Remember, Moses was like, me, Lord, but I stutter. I don't speak well. You sure you want me to go in? When God calls you to do things, the old cliche about he doesn't call the equipped, he equips those that he calls. When we go in, you don't always feel ready. So I would say, if there are women who are listening who feel like, I'm not quite ready, I'm getting this inkling, but I'm not ready. If God is truly calling you and you need to go into prayer, you need to get people praying with you and for you. You need to lay prostrate before the Lord and make sure that this is what he wants you to do. And this is the time when he wants you to do it. And when you get the affirmative to both of those things, understand that you will be tested. It's not something that you can do on your own. That's the whole point. If you could do it, there'd be no room for God. It's going to be scary. It's going to be something where you question, am I the one? Am I enough? Can I really do this? But just stay faithful. I told you I did the self-reflection, the self-confrontation, the prayer. There are just so many different things. I was in service to other people. When you have done all that you can do to prepare yourself, that's when you just sit back and let God be God. But when someone comes up and tells you you literally saved their life, or you saved their marriage, or they thank you for talking to their child and intervening, you feel an extreme amount of joy, you feel gratitude, and you feel like, Lord, I'm not worthy, but thank you so much for using me. I think there's probably, I don't know what it's like to be high on drugs, but this has got to supersede that.
That is
There
the
can
truth.
be no better feeling than knowing that God selected you to be of service to someone that he loves. That's saying a lot. That's saying
That
a lot.
says a lot. And I really hope this encourages someone who's watching right now who's kind of like about starting your own ministry, or maybe you're not playing 100% out there as it relates to building your kingdom business, but someone needs you. Someone is praying for you, and you have the ability to change lives. And that's
Yes.
what we're called to do. We're called to be a light. We're called to change lives. And so, Dr. Linda, you're doing just that. I'm so grateful to have you with us today. I would love for you to share a little bit about how people can follow up with you to learn more information about you. What is your website?
Absolutely. Yeah, so they can go to thedrlinda.com, and it's just THE. There you go, thedrlinda.com. Thank you. And there's information a little bit about me. There's stuff about the some of the programs that we have, the coaching that's done. There's resources on there. I've got things like books that I've written and affirmation cards to help you with the process. We have t-shirts that remind you. There's one t-shirt we have that, talks about unapologetically me. You've got to start breaking those chains with those limiting beliefs. And for the most part, they are living in your subconscious mind, meaning that you don't even know they are there. But when a professional like myself gets in front of you and starts asking you questions, you start to understand why you do some of the things you do. And it may go all the way back to being 3, 5, 12, 18, but it had an impact. Good example. There was something my mom used to say that she meant in a very positive way, and it had a positive impact on me. But it's only in recent years that I'm realizing there was a flip side. My mother used to say what many Black mothers say. She said, as a Black woman in America, you have to be twice as good as everybody else to be given half the chance. So that has a lot to do with why I've got a bachelor's, 2 masters, a PhD, and a bunch of certifications, because I took that message to heart. I knew that I would be tested and tried, and I knew that I wanted to be able to come out and boom, there you go. You're looking for this degree? Boom, there you go. You want this experience? Yes, I have it. But the flip side of that was it was sending a subliminal message that, the world's not going to think you measure up. And so when you start feeling like other people don't think you measure up, when something goes wrong, you wonder yourself, do I not measure up? So it did have a negative side to it as well. So just remember that words have power, and understand that everything that happens in your life, it stays in your psyche, and it's going to have some impact on you. So you need to unpack all of that before you can move forward. and help somebody else, because everybody has some trauma that they need to heal from.
That's the truth, Dr. Linda. That's the truth. And so thank you so much for being here. Again, you all visit her website if you'd like to learn more about Dr. Linda and her work. Once again, you're a blessing, Dr. Linda. So
Thank
appreciate you
you.
being on the show
You
today.
know, I love you, girl. Anytime you call, I will do my best to answer.
I appreciate you, sis. Thank you so much. And thank you all for tuning in, especially those who are watching live. You are the best. And be sure, if you haven't already, hit that, not just hit, slam that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, so you can never miss an episode of what we have going on for you, because this show, week after week, we are live at 7 p.m. on Monday, 7 p.m. Central Time, to show you other impact women who are doing incredible things for the kingdom. Also, again, you can download your free ministry launch starter kit and also get a copy of my book, Sister Start Your Ministry, at sisterstartyourministry.com. Please visit that website to get a bunch of tools to help you to go to the next level in your ministry. So that's it for this week's episode of Impact Women. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Dr. Linda Bing. And until next week, sister, you stay encouraged. You keep pursuing the visions that God put on your heart and continue to make impact in the world. All right, sister. God bless. Take care.